Before we get into this video, if you're looking to go to the US Grand Prix, then I am once again partnering up with my good friends over at Headout. This year they were kind enough to send me to the Hungarian Grand Prix using their tickets, and so if you'd like to go to the US Grand Prix in Austin for what should be a great weekend, doubly so given that it's a sprint race, which always makes for a better fan experience, then head over to Headout using the link in the description, and by using my promo code ALDAS500, you can save over £800 or over $1,000 for my friends over in America on tickets to the race. This offer is limited to just the first 10 people to redeem the code, so make sure that you're quick, but if you do miss out, then you can still use code ALDAS30 for 30% off tickets to both the US and the Mexican Grand Prix, with seats available in the fantastic stadium section. Once again, see the links in the description, and thank you Headout. In 2009, McLaren were coming into the season as the reigning champions after winning the driver's title with Lewis Hamilton. For 2009, there was a major rule change with a massive overhaul of the aero regulations aimed at improving racing. Now, where have we heard that one before? McLaren, however, came into the season with the wrong aerodynamic concept, and in particular around the front wing, opting to go with an in-wash design where the front wing end plate tapered the airflow into the tyre instead of an outwash design with the end plate tapering the airflow around the tyre. Along with missing out on the famous double diffuser, this meant the reigning champions made one of the worst cars on the grid and went from winning the title in the last race of 2008 to only just getting out of Q1 in the first race of 2009. After 9 races and under the old point system with 10 for a win, Lewis Hamilton was down in 11th place on 9 points, Heikki Kovalainen in 13th place on 4 points, and McLaren sat just 6th in the championship. However, right in the middle of the season at the German Grand Prix, McLaren brought an upgrade that marked the beginning of one of the greatest resurgences in Formula 1 history. In the last 8 races from the German Grand Prix, McLaren would now have the 3rd best car on the grid during this period. Lewis would go on to score 5 podiums, which included 2 Grand Prix wins in Hungary and Singapore, and by the end of the season Lewis would climb to 5th in the championship on 49 points, Heikki would finish in 12th on 22, and McLaren would beat Ferrari by just 1 point to finish 3rd in the Constructors. Now, all teams improve and regress as a season progresses. The development war is one of the most fascinating aspects of a technical sport like Formula 1, but the scale of turnaround that McLaren went through in 2009 was out of this world. In modern Formula 1, that just doesn't happen, but McLaren achieved the impossible. And now, over a decade later in 2023, McLaren have achieved the impossible yet again. Until I started crunching the numbers for this video, I didn't realize how many similarities there were between McLaren's 2009 and 2023 season. If we look at the first 8 races before McLaren brought their Austrian upgrades, Lando after Canada sat 11th in the championship on 12 points, Oscar was in 15th on 5 points, and McLaren, just like in 2009, was 6th in the Constructors. In the 8 races since Austria, although performance has still varied from track to track because of how close the upper midfield teams are, I think it's fair to say that McLaren has now become the 2nd or 3rd best car on the grid. In that time, Lando has taken 4 podiums and has now scored the 2nd highest number of points in that time frame, only behind Max Verstappen. That has now put him up to 7th in the championship on 115 points, with Oscar in 9th on 57, and McLaren has now climbed to 5th in the Constructors. McLaren knew that they were in trouble going into the season, even saying as much at their launch. New team boss Andrea Stella was quoted as saying that McLaren were not entirely happy with the launch spec of their car, putting it down to a late area of development that the team spotted, but which they couldn't put on the car in time for the start of the season. The issue that McLaren had at the beginning of the season, and which actually carried over from 2022, was poor aerodynamic performance and also tyre degradation. This manifested in straight line performance being a real key weakness for the team when they tried to bolt on more downforce, and looking at the top speed data from the first 3 races, it's no surprise to find their drivers consistently in the bottom half of the table, if not sometimes the outright slowest. Even though we were warned that McLaren were going to struggle, I don't think anyone was prepared for just how bad it was going to be. A double reliability-related DNF in the very first race pretty much set the tone, and then Miami was the absolute lowest point of the season, with both of their drivers getting knocked out of Q1, and Lando finishing a team-high 17th in the race. That being said, the good news was that McLaren was prepared for a tough start and already had upgrade packages in the pipeline, even talking during the launch that Azerbaijan was being targeted. What I don't think anyone expected, however, was that, whether this was already planned during the off-season or not, McLaren's rough start also coincided with a massive technical shakeup. Technical director James Key was booted out of the team, and in his place, a 3-person technical team was put in place. Peter Prodromo, who's at the team now as technical director of aerodynamics, Rob Marshall from Red Bull as TD of engineering and design, and David Sanchez from Ferrari as TD of car concepts and performance, with both Marshall and Sanchez only arriving in 2024. The Azerbaijan upgrade, which was in the works for a couple of months under the old technical team and comprised mainly of a brand new floor, didn't deliver the immediate gains that McLaren were hoping for. However, with the new technical team in place, Andrea Stella laid out the development plan for the remainder of the season and how this new structure would affect their performance. It will affect the delivery of performance because it will accelerate the development rate, and I think that we will see the impact already. Whilst Stella, speaking early in the season, didn't want to nail down a specific race of when these upgrades were going to arrive, he did say that they would look completely different, and also that basically they would be bringing a completely different car. I don't want to commit to any date, but before shutdown and then after shutdown, we would expect definitely another major upgrade which will address more areas of the car. It will be much more apparent. It's what somebody may call kind of a B-spec car. Because of how quickly McLaren wanted to bring out its upgrades, throughout the season they have been staggered between their two drivers, meaning Lando has always been given them first, with Oscar getting them a race later. Stella's promise of a B-spec car certainly delivered in Austria. They had brand new bodywork, new side pods, and also a new floor. As you can see from these pictures courtesy of the race, the changes, especially around the side pod, were definitely noticeable, and more importantly, they delivered on the track. Lando in the sprint shootout qualified in 3rd, but unfortunately more so down to strategy than anything else in mixed conditions, finished the sprint down in 9th. For the race, however, he qualified in 4th, and this time in dry conditions, executed a brilliant race to finish a season-high 4th place on the new car's debut. In particular, Lando praised the team's improved tyre degradation, which had been a massive problem for the team. Honestly, I didn't expect it to be quite as good. I was a little bit nervous going into the race about what to expect and how we were going to do and what the pace of the car was going to be, especially from a degradation side of it. I think like the first 5 laps of every stint, I felt confident we could be quick, just could we maintain that? Could we stay there for the whole race? And surprisingly, it was better than I was expecting. So a good surprise definitely helped us achieve the result today. From there, on track, McLaren hit their purple patch, and off track, smaller upgrades to help improve and optimize the car came as well. Oscar got the B-spec car in Silverstone, and then before the summer shutdown, further upgrades came at Hungary as well. The results were like a light switch. Back-to-back podiums for Lando in Silverstone and Hungary, and even Oscar only missed out on a podium in Silverstone due to an unlucky timing of the safety car. Whilst the Austria upgrades helped to add performance and improve their tyre wear, the next big upgrade in Singapore looked to address their still present straight line deficit. Now, Singapore being the second slowest track on the calendar doesn't necessarily give us the best comparison data, but in Suzuka the McLarens dominated the speed trap data, which is something that would be unheard of during the start of the season. The back-to-back strong weekends in Singapore and Japan, with 3 podiums in 2 races, are very significant because of the tracks themselves. Not only is the McLaren an all-round much more competitive car compared to the start of the season, but it also now works on a much wider range of tracks, from bumpy street tracks full of 90-degree slow-speed corners to high downforce, high-speed circuits as well. This turnaround by McLaren has been remarkable, but I can't also not give a huge amount of credit to their drivers as well. Oscar Piastri found himself in a really frustrating situation early on in the season, in an uncompetitive car and up against a really difficult teammate. And yet despite that, and after the Ricciardo fiasco last year at McLaren, he has looked more than respectable up against Lando, even beating him on the odd occasion. The podium in Japan was the least he deserved after plenty of bad luck this season in Silverstone, Singapore and Spa. The race itself and how he struggled to manage his tyres compared to Lando did still show that he still has some way to go, but that's just the natural flaws of a fast but talented rookie who is still filling in those empty data banks as he gains experience. Piastri's ceiling genuinely is of a world championship caliber driver, and it's no surprise that the team before Japan decided to tie him down to a long-term deal until the end of 2026. As far as Lando, he's one of those drivers that I've said for about 2 years now has nothing left to prove in the midfield cars that he's been given. When the car wasn't competitive, he was still picking up the points, putting in exceptional qualifying performances like the P3 in Spain, and just generally keeping McLaren afloat. As mentioned at the beginning of the video, since Austria, Lando has scored the second most points on the grid, only behind Max. He's a driver who has been ready to fight for wins and championships since 2021 in my opinion, but the question still remains, will he get to do that at McLaren? The team has been gearing up to become a title contender, with a new wind tunnel and driver and simulator loop all now having an impact on the 2024 car. But do McLaren deserve credit for recovering to where they are now? Or actually, have they only returned to the level that they should have been at in the first place from the start of the season? Or when it comes to expectations of where the team should be by now, here is what Zach Brown said all the way back in 2021. We will have been caught up by 2024 with all of our infrastructure, most specifically the wind tunnel. Or we'll have no excuses come the 2024 season, and would like to think that at that point the sport is going to be so competitive that there will be a variety of teams fighting for the championship. I'd like to think that we would be one of them. And now, apart from the exquisite bit of irony given how many teams are fighting for the title this year, Zach was right. In 2024, McLaren have no excuses. They have the drivers, they have the budget, they have the facilities, and now they have the management and technical structure that they wanted. I don't feel like I'm putting unfair expectations on them by saying that in 2024, they need to start the season challenging for consistent podiums, and they need to be race winners. It's as simple as that. The reason why I talked about 2009 at the beginning of this video is because that's exactly what McLaren then went on to do in 2010. Although the car wasn't really good enough to win the title, with 2 world champions they won 5 races, and Lewis went into the final race as one of 4 drivers capable of winning the championship, albeit he was a massive outsider as he was 24 points behind with only 25 remaining, and basically needed divine intervention to have any hope. The point is, if the team still isn't achieving even at least close to that by next season, not only do I think that it will be a failure, but I think the future of Lando Norris will also be more of a debate. If Checo isn't retained by Red Bull for 2025, Christian Horner has already come out and basically admitted that Lando Norris will be right at the very top of their replacement list, alongside Daniel Ricciardo. Despite the fact that Lando's McLaren contract runs out at the end of 2025, if McLaren are still just podium contenders and aren't winning races next year, I think Lando will be more than entitled to leave for a team that can actually give him a title-challenging car. In the here and now, McLaren have once again produced a once-in-a-decade resurgence. But having said that, if they don't build on it and deliver from the very first race of next season, then in the end this season would have all been for nothing. Well, there you have it. If you did enjoy this video and want to support the channel, then don't forget to subscribe. That would be massively appreciated. And once again, a big thank you to Headout. Don't forget to check out their links in the description to get the best price tickets to both the US and also the Mexican Grand Prix. And I'll see you in the next one.